So with Deadpool and Wolverine right around the corner, as it always seems to happen whenever we have a new, highly anticipated Marvel project, the narrative is spreading that this movie could save the MCU. So what do I think? Can Deadpool and Wolverine actually save Marvel? Marvel, Jesus. Well, frankly, no. And the reason I say that is because Deadpool and Wolverine is an individual project. And I don't think the main problem with the MCU is their individual projects. Whoa. The main problem for the MCU is when it comes to their overarching story, or the big picture. Now, I go into a lot more detail on this in my video on why Marvel is struggling, where I'm able to really lay out all the problems they've been having since Endgame. So I'm gonna link that video up above here, highly recommend. But in short here, the biggest problem for Marvel right now is the MCU as a whole. You go back to the Infinity Saga. It's not like every project was perfect. They had their misfires. They had their Incredible Hulks, their Captain Marvels, Thor the Dark Worlds, even Age of Ultron was disappointing to a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, they had their gems, their Winter Soldiers, their Ragnaroks, their Civil Wars, but a lot of the projects in the MCU's Infinity Saga were just good. And don't get me wrong, I understand it's hard to put out even just good movies. I'm not trying to minimize that. But the point is, the MCU didn't become the biggest thing in the world because every project was just so fantastic that you couldn't miss a single one. It wasn't a Christopher Nolan situation where you go to a Christopher Nolan movie because every single one is just so good that you can't miss out on a single one. The MCU became the biggest thing in the world because they were telling this incredibly exciting, ambitious, overarching story where you had all of these individual stories, but they were always very clearly part of a much bigger story. And that's what kept fans going back, and why you think of a movie like Captain Marvel. Why it made $1 billion is because each movie was a piece of the puzzle that people couldn't miss. So everyone flocked out to see Captain Marvel because they knew they couldn't miss it before Endgame. And that is what's now missing from the MCU. The MCU now feels pretty directionless and scattered and spread out, where a lot of the projects don't feel like they're all building up to one greater story. Obviously, we are building up towards Secret Wars and the multiverse, but the projects that push that narrative forward are so far and few between now. And so what's really going to save the MCU now is a string of films. A string of films kind of like how they had in Phase 1. Where every single movie was building up to a clear end goal, which was putting the Avengers together. And each movie built excitement amongst fans until it was paid off when the Avengers came together for the first time. That's what Marvel needs now. A string of films, all clearly building up towards an end goal that is focused, has a clear sense of direction, and builds excitement among the audience. Not one individual project. And so that's why I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine by itself can save the MCU. It could be the start of a string of projects that get the MCU back on track, but the MCU needs a collection of films, not one individual project right now. This was more of a laid-back video, but if you want to see my full in-depth breakdown on why Marvel has been struggling since Endgame, click wherever I've linked it on the screen.